So here we are, on fifth of our 6th week on a series entitled, Lay It All Down. And I want to start with a confession. And please don't get out your phones and record this, okay? But just, let me just give you a little bit about like what this last week was like for me. What I found over the last couple of months is an increasing number of responsibilities with a decreasing amount of time. Anybody ever wish for more time in the day? Anybody ever wish for more time in the week? Okay, so thank you for being honest with me. The rest of you are probably sleeping. But over these last few months, my schedule has increased exponentially. The rate at which my life is moving is faster than I ever anticipated in Potter County. And somebody told me I'm an arrogant flatlander. Maybe. I don't. But the speed at which life has been going. So here's my confession. Thursday at 3 o'clock, right? My goal in any given week is to do all the things that God asked me to do, but actually get a day off, right? So like get some time to spend with my family. That's been pretty inconsistent. So there's part of my confession. I had a 27-day period where I didn't take a day off because I couldn't. And it hurt my family, honestly, right? And it hurt me. And so I'm trying to get back into this rhythm of Sabbath and protecting those days off. And so Thursday is typically my last day of my work week. I try to make Thursday the last day of my work week. And then I try to shut down on Friday, and then I re-engage halfway through on Saturday to get things ready for Sunday morning. Because Sunday is my Monday, right? Does that make sense? Sunday is my Monday as a pastor. So Thursday is really supposed to be my Friday. So 3 o'clock Thursday afternoon, I sat down, and I opened my Bible, and it was one of the first times I had a chance all week to look at my message, the sermon for this week. And the first thing I saw in my notes was the burden of busyness. And I was just like, Yeah, so I got 2 hours to write a sermon on the burden of busyness. 3 o'clock on a Thursday. And I was faced with a choice in that moment. Like many weeks, the thing that gets kind of pushed to the side is my own kind of time on the message. Usually I just wind up doing a whole bunch of other things. And so here it was, Thursday, 3 o'clock, and I sat down. Imagine the irony of me trying to write a sermon on the burden of busyness when I'm feeling so busy that I've got 2 hours left in my work week. And I was faced with a choice. Do I take the rest of my Thursday and then most of a Friday and try to get it all done and then once again not have a day with my family? And so I did something that I don't normally do. I worked to the traditional like 5:30, 6 o'clock on Thursday, and then I just shut my Bible. And I figured probably the best illustration that I could give you as a church in a sermon on busyness is to spend the day with my family. So that's what I did. I took Friday entirely off, a decent part, well, entirely off. I had one problem we won't talk about. Man, this is getting really messy. Okay. So most of Friday off, except for one time-sensitive issue. Saturday, I took most of the day off and just got to spend with my family, and then re-engaged Saturday night and this morning. And I tell you all of these things, not to make you feel bad, and honestly not to sound prideful that I worked, I had this period where I worked basically 4 weeks straight without a day off. Like that should not encourage you, that should discourage you, right? That should not be like, wow, what an amazing, no. How stupid of my pastor to work 4 weeks straight without a day off, right? I'm telling you these things because I struggle. And this might be the reason why I didn't want to do this sermon. And might be the reason why I didn't want to do this whole series is because of my own burden with busyness. Realizing that life goes faster than I ever thought it would. And finding that space to be the husband, the father that God's called me to be. It's not easy. There's a statement I read this past week that stopped me in my tracks. It says, hurry is a form of violence to the soul. At the beginning of this series, 5 weeks ago, I said to you, hey, I'm noticing the tattered edges of my soul in the midst of the heaviness and the burden, right? And then I read this, in some ways, I don't have a tattoo, but in some ways, I was thinking about getting this tattooed on my arm, right? Like, hurry is a form of violence to the soul. It was in a book by John Mark Comer. And what he means is, and what I understand him is that when we rush from one thing to the next, when we fill our lives, when we fill our schedule, when we fill our time with all these different things, we leave almost no space for our souls. We leave almost no space to grieve. We leave almost no space to process. We leave almost no space to love and serve, right? Because we're just so full. And what are we full of? All the things, right? We just get so full of all these things. And oftentimes, I think, right, it seems like just one thing after another, right? We've said that. One thing after another keeps happening in our lives. And then we wind up smushing the time that we have for our souls. We wind up compressing the time that we have to grieve and to live and to serve from a wholehearted standpoint. And we're just filling our lives full of the things. And they kind of come down to 3 categories, okay? This is my opinion. Things that we focus on as humans. Knowing things, doing things, feeling things. Notice that? Those are the 3 main categories, right? The pursuit of information, knowledge, right? The pursuit of getting stuff done. Anybody have that problem? And the pursuit of feeling good, right? And many of us, we kind of lean towards one of these 3 most of the time, right? Some of us are thinkers, some of us are doers, and some of us are feelers. Can we be honest, right? That by and large, all of humanity, in some way, shape, or form, we fit into one of these 3 categories. And sometimes we ignore the other things, and sometimes we focus on them. A few of us are a bit of a hybrid of knowing and feeling or doing and feeling, right? But by and large, these are the 3 primary things that we wind up doing. Knowing things, doing things, feeling things. And we think, right, this is how the formula works. I forgot. So that's just the human thing. Christians, right, so followers of Christ, we go from just knowing things, doing things, feeling things, to knowing the right things, doing the right things, feeling the right things. That's the difference between humans and Christians, right? As humans, we just want to know the things, do the things, have the things, right? As followers of Christ, we think, okay, let's just insert right? Let's insert the good things. Let's know the right things. Let's do the right things. Let's feel the right things. And then the formula is knowing the right things, doing the right things, feeling the right things, then we're going to have the right things, right? Is that not the condition that we all fall into? We turn life into a formula, especially as Christians, right? That if we know all the right things, right, know all the Bible verses we're supposed to know, and if we do all the right things, right, we pray and we read our Bibles and we go to church and all those kinds of things, and then we feel the right things, we don't get upset, we don't get mad, we don't get sad, right, like we avoid all the bad feelings, pursue all the good feelings, then at the end, we're going to have the right things. Does that look anything like your life? Does that look anything like your journey? This is, I think, this is my opinion, this is very much kind of the human condition, and this is at the source of busyness. This is where busyness comes from. Because we're focusing on the things, the acquisition, the doing, and most of the time, the energy comes from us, doesn't it? We have to know the things. We have to read, pursue, understand. We have to do the things. We have to accomplish. We have to feel the things, right? I want to feel happy. And if I don't feel happy, then I need to go make myself feel happy, right? That's the condition. But the net result is that we wind up so busy. We keep pursuing all the things, knowing the right things, doing the right things, feeling the right things, and then we think at the end, it's all going to be right. Can I ask you, and I mean this genuinely, does this formula work for you? Is it working? If it's something that in every way, shape, and form, many of us have fallen into at some point, right? Know the things, do the things, feel the things, and we're just hoping that, like, we line up all the things, we pull on the jackpot, and then it all just shoots out, right? And we've got all the things, right? But is it working? For me, I'll be honest with you, it's not. Most of the time, it isn't working. Most of the time, the knowing, doing, feeling doesn't always wind up with the having. The jackpot doesn't just show up at the end. And when that happens, right? When the formula is off, right? When we get to the bottom, when we don't have the things, we're faced with two choices, right? One is go back and try harder, right? Anybody ever get stuck in that one? I'm going to learn more. I'm going to do more. I'm going to feel more, right? Like, we go back and we try harder and try harder and try harder. Or, right, and that just ups the busyness. Or the other option is that we escape. We just leave the formula entirely and escape into a 3-pound bag of carbohydrates, right? We escape into social media. We escape into Netflix. We escape into all these things that just like, well, if I can't know the things, do the things, feel the things, and then have the things, well, at least I can feel good for a little while, right? So either we throw ourselves back into this formula that doesn't work, or we escape entirely, and then we wind up developing these habits that make us feel worse over and over, right? This is our condition, and that is why John Mark Comer says that it is violence to the soul. That busyness is violence to our soul. Because we keep working over and over and over and over at the formula that doesn't seem to work. So, what are some manifestations of the busy sickness, right? What are some ways that overly busy life, the hurried life shows up, okay? Here's a list. You could probably add to it. Irritability. Like, just something little happens and all of a sudden, like, I'll call it an overly large response to an overly small problem, okay? A big response to a small problem. Irritability, hypersensitivity, right? Like the moment that somebody besides you does that one thing that you don't like, then you're going to, okay. That never happened, sorry. Restlessness, here's another one. You can't just enjoy yourself. You can't enjoy the time off that you have, and you just feel like you always have to go. What about workaholism, right? The thought that if I work harder, then all of a sudden all the things are going to come out and everything's going to be okay. Or you begin to isolate yourself because you're escaping, right? And so you pull yourself away from people like, oh man, people are the problem. It's not the formula, it's the people. So let me get away from the people. Or maybe our priorities get out of whack, or our self-care goes down. And our blood pressure goes up, and our sugar goes up, right? Or we engage in these escapist behavior, or this spiritual laziness. We kind of abandon those things that we know connect us to God, all because we're so busy working the formula. All because we're so busy trying to know the things, do the things, and feel the things so we can have the things, and this is our result. Irritability and emotional numbness and restlessness and isolation. Okay, so don't tell me, but answer this question. How many of these are true for you in a given week? Go ahead, take a moment. Busyness is revealed in silence, so I'll give you some silence. How many do you see in your own life? Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 11? There's only 10 on the list, just so you know. When I first took this test, okay, I don't want to tell you what I scored. I'll just say it was more than 50%, okay? And this is just an easy way to tell if perhaps you're so busy that you're doing violence to your soul. These are just some easy ways to tell if you've just got so much going on in your life that your soul has no space. And then we read these verses in Matthew 11, 28 through 30. This is the 5th week we've spent in these same 3 verses. And I hope you're not getting sick of these verses. I hope they're beginning to take root in your soul. I hope the truth in these verses begin to take root in your soul. Okay, so let's do a quick exercise, because Matthew 11, 28 through 30, we're going to get there in just a minute. These are the words of Jesus. He talks about this burden, this heaviness, the busyness that we carry, right? But can I ask you just one more question? Can you imagine for a moment a Jesus that did this? Can you imagine for a Jesus that was stressed out, busy, anxious, like sitting on his phone at dinner, like half there doing, emails? Can you imagine a Jesus that's distracted and burdened by life, that's a workaholic, that's in isolation, that doesn't like spiritual lazy? Does that fit in the image you have of Jesus? So I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty than I already do, okay? But if Jesus is really none of these things, if Jesus was never this way, I would say that the one that was maybe most likely Jesus was irritable, but specifically with the religious leaders of his day that were kind of ruining people's lives, okay? There's a level of irritability there. But if by and large Jesus didn't demonstrate these things, then why are they such a part of our lives? If we're followers of Jesus. Where's the disconnect? If Jesus never lived this way, and yet we consistently live this way, and at the same time call ourselves followers of Jesus, where's the disconnect? Something's broke. Maybe it's the formula. Maybe it's the perspective that we have on what it means to follow Jesus, because Jesus, by and large, was none of these things. He exemplified none of these things for us in the Gospels. And so when Jesus in Matthew 11, 28, he says these things, come to me, the same me that never acts this way around you, right? Jesus is saying, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. All you who are worn out by busyness, all you who fill up your schedules with so much stuff so you can know the things and do the things and feel the things and eventually hopefully have the things even though the formula is broken. Jesus is saying, come to me, all those who are worn out with the busy sickness. Even the phones make us feel busy sick sometimes. Come to me, all you are weary and burdened, and I will give you more burdens. I will give you more things to do. I will give you more things to know. I will give you more things to feel. No, this invitation is just, if we break it down for a moment, it should stun us. Where is the know things, do things, feel things formula in this verse? Where is it? Where's that typical formula? Jesus is saying, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Okay, I want to tell you something. I've been struggling over the last couple of weeks to help us understand what a yoke is, right? We're not an agrarian society. We don't typically have oxen. Maybe you do. That'd be cool. Let me come out to your farm sometime. But generally, a yoke, as we understand it, it's a tool. It's an implement that help oxen work better. But we don't have those things. Let me give you an example that might make sense. About 3 years ago, we bought a new refrigerator for our house. Okay. How many of you are able to pick up a full-size refrigerator on your own? Come on, yes. All right, thank you for your honesty. Most of the time, it takes more than two people to pick up a full-size double-door refrigerator. They're massive. So we ordered this brand new refrigerator. I'm thinking there's got to be at least 3 guys going to get this in the door, or else they're going to have to take it apart or something like that. They walk up, and they take these, have you seen this yet? They take these straps, they put them over their shoulders, right? And then they crisscross them, slide them up underneath the fridge, and then they just stand up and start walking with a refrigerator. 2 guys. I was like, yes, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. So what Jesus is saying is, right, we have this formula that we think is going to work. Know the things, do the things, feel the things, have the things. And we're trying to pick up the refrigerator all by ourselves, and our muscles are popping out, and our veins are all coming out of our arms, right? And we're about to just blow, we're about to blow our gasket right now in this moment. And what Jesus is saying, there's a different way to carry the burdens. And so the yoke that Jesus is referring to, it's not like a physical implement. It's not even the straps. What a yoke was, it's a way of approaching life. When a new rabbi, and that's what many people consider Jesus to be, when a new teacher would come on the scene in Jesus' day, they would say, I have a new yoke. Literally what that means is a new way of handling life, a new way of carrying the burdens, a new way of understanding life. And so what Jesus is saying, hey, stop picking up the fridge by yourself. Let me show you a new way to carry the burdens, a new way to approach life. So take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Not go and know the things yourself. That's where the apprenticeship comes in, right? The being like Jesus. So what he's saying is your formula is perfectly primed to give you a miserable result, right? The formula, knowing things, doing things, feeling things, we're going to have the things, right? Like Jesus is saying there's a different way of approaching life. There's a different way of carrying the burdens, but it requires us to come to him, to put down the old way, to set down the refrigerator, and to pick up the new way, to learn how to do that. It just doesn't happen automatically. He says, and to learn from me, to grow from me, to apprentice under me, to be more like me, says Jesus. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my new way is easy. My new way of looking at life is easy, and my burden is light. So let's try it in a different version, okay? We started this the first week, and I think this really will help us. I'm going to slow down, okay? I'm going to practice what I think we need to do to unbusy our lives. And I'm going to read through this passage slowly together. Maybe you want to close your eyes. Maybe you want to create a sacred space for yourself. Maybe you want to read through it out loud. That's okay too. But can we give Jesus the opportunity to penetrate our hearts with the truth right now? Are you tired? Ask Jesus. Are you burned out on religion, on a formula? Come to me is the invitation. Get away with me and you will recover your life, a new way to live. I will show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Learn the new formula, Jesus says. For I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting. I won't put a refrigerator on you, says Jesus. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. The secret to unburdening our busyness is in that very last line. And I don't even want to call it a secret because Jesus said it a couple thousand years ago. So we're just rediscovering the truth, okay? keeping company, being with Jesus. Not doing things for Jesus, not learning things about Jesus, not feeling Jesus, but being with Jesus. Our formula, we forget, right? We think if we know enough things about Jesus, if we do enough things for Jesus, if we feel Jesus enough, then we'll have all the things. But what Jesus is saying, it's not about knowing and doing and feeling. It's about being with, in the presence of, modeling life after, looking more like the Jesus that we say that we follow. I won't call it a secret, but the truth to unbusying our lives right now is that last line. Jesus says, come hang out with me. Come spend time with me. We all think that if we just had a couple more hours in the day, right? We all think if we just had a few things crossed off our list. I'm a list crosser, okay? I'll make lists of things I already did just so I can cross them off, right? Thank you for your honesty. I'm a straight type A, okay? I get it. I do the things. If we go back to the formula, right? Mine is right in the middle. I'm the do the things guy, right? If I just do enough things, it's all going to work out, right? Jesus is saying, it's not about knowing, not just about knowing, not just about doing, not just about feeling, but about being with, spending time in the presence of. It's not about adding more hours to our day. It's not about crossing more things off our list, but being with Jesus. Living like Jesus lived, loving like Jesus loved, serving like Jesus served, right? Think about all the times that Jesus said no. Think about all the times that Jesus got away to be alone. Think about all the times that Jesus ate. I mean, think about that. Jesus was an eater, man. That's the only thing about me and Jesus is similar is that we're both foodies, okay? Maybe, hopefully, a couple other things. But Jesus, over and over throughout the Gospels, Jesus was taking naps all the time. I love naps. Just being honest. I could sleep standing up sometimes. But Jesus, he shows us this way of taking care of his soul. To sleep when he needs rest, to eat when he needs food, to get time away when he needs to be alone, to engage with people when he needs to be with. Like, Jesus showed us this. He modeled. He didn't command it, right? Think about this. Jesus very rarely commanded us to do the things. Jesus very rarely commanded us to feel the things. Jesus very rarely commanded us to know the things. He invites us to be with him, to model our lives after him, to say no when we need to say no, and to say yes to a nap. Jesus gives us it. And think about this, okay? So think about the way that Jesus exemplified an unbusy life. Do you know how long it took for Jesus to do one miracle? 30 years. It took Jesus half a lifetime to do his first miracle. So for 30 years, he lived in obscurity, right? 30 years. I struggle with 30 minutes not doing something. Jesus, for 30 years, he lived in obscurity. Nobody knew who he was. He served his Father. As far as we know, he was a carpenter. Quiet life in the Galilean countryside. And then, okay, so after 30 years, God calls him into this, ministry season, right? It's what we call it, the season of ministry for Jesus. First thing he does is he goes down and he gets baptized. He shows us an obedience, right? Like, hey, I'm going to live the way that you're supposed to live. And so he gets baptized by John. Then what happens? 40 days he does nothing but get beat up by Satan, right? He spends 40 days in the wilderness. It's like the first thing Jesus does is he's showing us how to suffer. You see what Jesus did? He didn't go study in the temple. He didn't try to do more things, accomplish more things, feel more things. He just showed us how to suffer well for 40 days after 30 years of doing nothing that the world knew about. I don't know about you, but remarkable example. And then think about all the numerous times If you read the Gospels, so many of the stories in the Gospels are actually interruptions of what Jesus was trying to do. Have you noticed that? Over and over and over, as he was going, so-and-so interrupted. As he was going, so-and-so interjected. As he was going, right? Like, Jesus' entire life was interruptions and interjections. And very rarely, I mean, the only time he didn't really create space for those people was for those who thought they knew it all. But he's on his way to help somebody who's sick, and somebody else who's sick interrupts him, and he stops, and he spends time with him. And then think about all the times that Jesus invited children to be with him. Right? In that society, children were like forgotten, in many ways worthless, because they often didn't live to become adults. And so nobody spent a whole lot of time with kids, but Jesus spent these beautiful moments with children over and over and over again. Jesus modeled this unhurried, busy, free life, even though he knew he only had 3 years. Like, what would you do if you knew you had 3 years to change the world? Right? What would you do if you knew you had 3 years to save all of human society? Would you take a nap? Would you eat with your friends? Would you spend time with little kids? Jesus shows us this beautiful example of unhurried, unbusy life over and over and over. And I learned this. I learned this principle. I'm learning. Okay, I can't say I learned it because I already confessed I didn't. So I'm learning this principle that every yes to something is a no to something else. Every time we say yes to another event, another activity, another thing that we've got to do, another schedule, we're saying no to something else. You see what happened about 18 months ago? The world kind of hit a pause button, right? And all of us kind of had to stop. And at first, many of us kind of liked it. We're like, oh, yeah, this is nice. I can't go to work. I can't really shop all that much. We're not going to do any sports stuff. We're not going to hang out with our friends. And like for the first couple of weeks, most of us were like, yeah, this is pretty cool. And then like week 4, we're like, okay, we're going to die, right? We're miserable, right? 3 or 4 weeks later, we're absolutely miserable. And so like just in the last couple months, it feels like we're finally free, right? I've heard this over and over and over again from so many people. Oh, we're finally free. Like, wait, we weren't before? But that's how we felt, right? Our schedules just went from being completely cram-packed to like almost nothing in a given day. We're like, okay, got to eat today, right? At the beginning of COVID. I should probably get on, my computer at some point for work, right? And we let that be our existence for about 3 to 4 weeks. Then we were miserable for about 15 months. And now that we're finally free, we're trying to catch up on everything. Have you noticed? We have serious FOMO. You guys know what that is? Fear of missing out. We have like over-the-top FOMO. We're like, oh man, all these things I missed for the last 15 months, I got to do them all now. I got to get all those schedules back, those people back. I got to go see my friends. I got to go these places, right? We've like doubled down on the busyness since we've come back from COVID. And we wonder why our souls feel like we're experiencing violence. Right? We wonder why we're so tired and burned out and frustrated. It's because the formula is a mess. God never intended our lives to be reduced to a formula. God never intended our lives to be consumed with knowing and doing and feeling and then waiting for everything to get right. Instead, Jesus invites us to abide, to be with him, to ask him how full our schedule they should be, right? To live in a conscious daily awareness of the presence of Christ. Not just doing the things, knowing the things, feeling the things, but being with Jesus. John 15, 3 and 4, Jesus says, abide in me, spend time with me, get to know me. Matthew chapter 10, he says, come and learn from me. With all the knowing and the doing and the feeling, we've forgotten the being. the being with Jesus, the putting him first. We've forgotten it. We've marginalized it. And in so doing, we do violence to our souls. And we're under this busy sickness much of our lives. And all the while, Jesus is whispering, come be with me. Jesus is whispering, come be alone with me. Recover your life. Slow down your schedule. Listen for the still small voice. For me, and I'm not going to give you another formula, so we're just going to practice it. But for me, when Jesus talks about abiding, it means saying no to an overly busy schedule. It means saying yes to moments alone. It means saying yes to a Sabbath, a real day off. It means saying yes to giving up things that we don't necessarily really need. It's this new way of living. It's abandoning a formula that we know does not work and trusting him for a new way of life. So we're going to do that this morning. We're going to close with Psalm 23. And I'm just going to invite you to abide. I'm just going to invite you to spend time in the presence of Jesus and ask him to teach you a new way to live. So could we just take a moment of silence together to be in the presence of Jesus? The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the path, the right paths, for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley, the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. For surely your goodness and your love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Can I show you something in Psalm 23? David's posture. He starts by believing he doesn't lack anything. There's nothing more he has to do. There's nothing more he has to think. There's nothing more he has to feel. He's saying that God's given me everything I need. And then the Heavenly Father is the one that is bringing the rest, right? He's not forcing rest upon himself. He's saying the closer I get to God, the more he brings me towards rest. He's the one that leads me beside quiet waters. I can't get myself there. He refreshes my soul. I can't get myself there, is what David's saying. Refreshing, quiet, rest. Those are things that we cannot create in and of ourselves, that we have to give ourselves a posture and allow God to give those things to us. He guides me along the right paths. Not that we have to do the right things, know the right things, feel the right things, but he, by abiding in him, he guides us along those right paths for his name's sake. And yes, we all have burdens, right? He talks about the darkest valleys and the evil all around him. Like, he's not ignoring the reality of the burdens of life, but then he's saying that God's the one that anoints his head with oil. God's the one that brings refreshing. God's the one that brings the healing and the wholeness just by spending time with him. And that's why he says, that's why I will dwell with you. I don't think he means just being in church. He's not saying spending 24/7 in Cotterspur Alliance Church. We'd probably get arrested for doing that. But what David is saying, I live with the daily conscious awareness of the presence of Jesus, moment by moment, to be in the presence of God, experiencing his refreshing, his healing. And that's what Jesus is offering, and that's what David is talking about, this invitation to abide. Busyness is violence to the soul. Abiding is refreshing to the soul. Busyness tears us apart. Abiding puts us back together. Formulas leave us empty. Abiding fills us up. It's our choice. Heavenly Father, would you show us the formulas that don't work in our lives? Father, would you reveal to us those things that we believe about ourselves, or the things that we believe about life that we have to know or do or feel, and that just leave us empty? And then, with a humble and contrite heart, with a heart that is surrendered, would you teach us to abide in you, a new way of living? Teach us to abide, we pray. Amen.